Okay, so welcome back to Pioneers Intermediate class. This is week 12 and it will be the last week. So, yeah. And this week we're covering dictionaries, sets, and tuples. So, yeah. For some reason we added arrays, but we're not really going over them on this. Okay, so I think
Yeah,
Jesse said he wanted to go over this one.
yeah, okay. Um, so dictionaries, you can sort of think of them as kind of lists, but instead of indexes, you have these things called keys, and there's no order to them. And so keys are basically like the way you identify a value. So for example, in a list, your keys would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they're all different. So that if you tell it to look for the index, which is what we call them for lists, or in this case, key of, for example, 5, then you'd find the value that's listed there. Now, dictionaries differ from that because instead of just having a numbered list like that, you can have really whatever you want as your keys as long as they are unique from each other. And you can just call the dictionary for the specific key, and it will return whatever data is stored there. So, okay, yeah, it's very common to nest dictionaries and lists whenever you're storing data because they let you, for example, if you want to store a bunch of people, you can use that. And so when you're making a dictionary, when you make a list, you'd make it with like the square brackets. But as you see here, you make a dictionary using like the curly brackets, and inside you'd put, for example, I'll type it into chat really quickly. For example, I'd say dictionary is equal to let's see, yeah, so it's a dictionary. When you're creating it, as I said, you use the curly brackets. You can sort of treat it as a list almost when you're making it, and only it's kind of formatted different. For example, if I was to say Ayong as the key and the value as old, and then, for example, and then you can separate different entries. I'll put it in chat in a moment. For example, something like that. Right here, we have two entries separated by the comma. The first one has a key of Dayong, and it has a value of old, as separated by the colon. And the second one has a value of Austin. It has a key of Austin, and the value is not old. And there's a few other things you can do. You can call the dictionary name, and then you use square brackets for this, and you put the key inside. Sort of like it's basically like the exact same thing as with lists, but you put a key instead, and it'll return the specific value you're looking for. If you just called the dictionary without like using a key or anything or the brackets, then it'll just print out the whole thing. Dictionary name.update, what that does is you can, so basically after creating it, you can change a key or change a key to a certain value. If the key doesn't exist yet, it'll automatically create it. So that's also how you add a new one. And then lastly, .pop is used to remove an entry from the dictionary. Do we have any questions about this one? All right.
Yeah, also one of the most important things like that sets dictionaries apart from other data structures basically is that everything comes in pairs, right? So like in the example that Jesse gave here, our dictionary has the key Dayong, and that's like set to a pair value of old, and the value Austin is set to not old. So those are like always connected basically. All right, so the next thing we're talking about is sets. So sets are like data structures that do not allow duplicate items. So they're kind of like lists, except for like this is one of their main features. So they're also unordered and unindexed, and what that means is you can't like sort them like you would do with a list. And unindexed means you can't get like the index range. So like you can't get like the first item out of a set or anything. And similar to the dictionaries, they're also written with curly brackets, except for they aren't in like key value pairs. So if you I'm gonna pull up PyCharm real quick. Um, yeah. Okay. So I can create a set, this set, and inside I can have like values such as like apples and oh wait, this set equals apples, bananas. And if I put a duplicate item like apples in here, so it will technically allow you to do this, but when you try to print it out, that it's only going to print out apples one time since sets don't allow duplicates. So if you look here, it'll have bananas and apples. So yeah, that's like the main important thing to note about sets. Okay, now I'll go back to my slideshow. And so the last data structure that we're talking about is tuples. So tuples, they're unchangeable. So you can't like add or remove elements from them. So tuples are also like lists except for like their main thing is that you can't add or remove elements. And they're written with round brackets, unlike the regular square brackets that you see in lists. And similar to lists though, they are indexed and you can sort them. So tuples, really, you could sometimes ask like why you would even use tuples instead of lists, since lists basically just do more things than them. Except for lists or tuples are usually considered like a bit faster than them. So I think that's like their only real upside to them. So now we have a practice problem for you guys to do. So Dae Young is going shopping and he has a shopping list with him. But then he realized that he added some of the grocery items multiple times and he needs your help to remake his list without any duplicate items. So for example, here we have a input of broccoli, apples, and oranges. This is like the input's basically like what's in his shopping list. And then we want you to output something with like only the single like time of each item. So like in this case, apples appears twice. We want you to create it where it only uh, outputs one time and put done in the chat when you're finished. All right, one person's done. We'll wait for at least two people to finish at least. Okay, so we have two people done. Does anyone want to share their solution to this? Well, uh, well, okay, yeah, that works, but you're just like creating these lists with like those given those given like input things. But what we want you to do instead is like to take an input instead of just like putting those things inside of your set. Like we want you to use like the actual input function. Yeah, and remember, just like say done when you're finished. Okay, so one person's done. We'll wait for another one. Okay, I guess I'll go over the solution then. Okay, let me stop presenting. Okay, so what we want to do is, so basically, you basically already gotten the solution, right? We just need to turn this into a set and print out the set. So what we can do is we can create our variable, this set, and then we can, so first, since we're taking input, we're just going to do input dot split. And what this will do is it's going to turn it into a list instead of a set. So then after that, we can do this set equals set this set. And what it will do is it'll just turn it into a set. Yeah. And so now we can just print this set and it should print out the correct thing. So we have apples. Let me check what it was. Broccoli, apples, oranges. Okay. And yeah, it'll print out each item only once. So yeah, that's basically what all we need to do for that problem. Okay. And then, so our second problem is Julian is interested in the amount of time he spends coding every day. So he writes down the number of hours he spends every day, and he wants you to help him find the mode of the number of hours he spends coding. So basically, if you don't know, the mode is like the number of hours that appears or the number that appears the most. So in our sample input here, on day one he codes 2 hours, day two he codes 2 hours, day three he codes 1 hour, and so on. So the number like the mode would be the number of hours he codes on most days. So since he codes 2 hours on day one, day two, and day four, he codes 2 hours 3 days, and for the only other ones, it's only two times or one time each. So the mode would be two. So yeah, we'll give you guys some time to do this one as well. And yeah, remember to put done in the chat when you're finished. Okay, so one person's done. We'll either wait for two people to finish or we'll wait till like a certain time. Okay, so two people have finished now. I guess we can go over the solution then. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And so Jesse said he wanted to go over this one. So yeah.
Right. Okay, let me pull this up really quickly.
Actually, Jesse said he was going to go over the next problem. Oh, so I'm misunderstanding. My bad. Okay. Okay. So basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the mode. So we can do this using a dictionary. So each time a number appears, we can just like add like one to the key value. So the value will increase each time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our dictionary. And then we're going to take our input for the number. So we're going to get like hours equals input dot split. And so ours is now our list. So what we're going to do is we're going to do for I in hours. Uh, we're going to do if I is in the dictionary. So if I in dict, we're going to do dict I plus equals 1. So this is like to set the value like 1 up. So yeah. Next thing we're going to do, this is to like if the value is already in the dictionary. So if the value is not in the dictionary, we're going to create our else statement. We're going to do else dict I equals 1. So that means like we're creating our dictionary value for like that number of hours, and we're setting it equal to 1 because it's appeared one time. And this one, we're doing it because that means it appeared one more time. Then we're going to create a variable max value, which is like the mode or the um, maximum amount of times it's going to appear. So we're going to set that equal to 0 at first, and then we're going to create another variable equal to mode. So this one will be like the amount of hours, while the earlier, this one will be like set equal to the number, like the number of times that the hour appears. So yeah, the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna create our variable values, and we're gonna, or it's gonna be a list actually. We're gonna make a list of the dict values. So what this does basically is it takes all the values, which is like the amount of times each number of hours appears, and it's going to create a list of those, and we're going to set that to values. And so we're going to do the same thing with the keys. So we're going to do keys equals list dict dot keys. And then the next thing we have to do is we're just going to have to iterate through the lists to see like which one has the most occurrences. So for I in, we're going to do this using our range-based for loop, because that way it won't just like be one of these lists. We could go through both of them. So we can just do the length values. And we're going to do if the values I. So this is just like the values table to see like the number of occurrences. If it's greater than our variable for it, which we're going to set max value, If it's greater than it, then we're gonna do max value equals value, and then so we want to also have it track the we don't want it to only track the number of occurrences. We also need it to return like the which number of which number of hours he spent coding that is associated with that number of days he coded that much time. So we're also going to set mode equals to keys I. So and then after this runs fully, we should get the number where it goes the most. So then all we have to do is print the mode, and this should work. Let me check with the test data. So 2 to 1, 2, 3. Not supported between instances, line 13. Great. What did I do wrong here? Int and list values. So list. Wait, let me try copy pasting this. Wait, max value.
Look in the chat.
Oh, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah, thank you, Julian. This is why Julian taught the competitive programming masterclass. He's very talented at this type of stuff. So now if I put in the data, it should print out 2, which is the mode, since 2 appears the most times. Okay. And I'll go back to the slideshow now. Okay, so our final problem is Sean has 2 dictionaries with completely different keys, and he wants to combine them. So, and he wants you to help him do that and then print it out. So our sample input is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the first, every odd number input basically, like the first one, the third one, like 1, 3, 5, and 7. These are all the keys, and the values will be the second number. And she wants you to combine them into a dictionary. And yeah, say done when you're finished.
So has anyone like finished it? How are we doing?
So what part are you confused about? Okay, so one person's done. So what you're doing is you don't need to turn the inputs into sets. You can just so like once you get the inputs, you can just take like every second number inside of the list and assign it as like the value while putting the first one as the key, if that makes sense. So when you do that for two lines, and then you can add the or like concatenate the two dictionaries. Okay, so basically you don't need to turn the inputs into sets at all. You can just like do input dot split. You don't need to do the set part. So after you get that, um, so the problem is saying that you're taking the first number and you're turning it into the key, and like the second number becomes the value, and you do that repeatedly for each one. So what you can do is you can iterate through the list, and you can assign the first one as a key value and the second one as the or you can assign the first one as a key and the second one as the value, and you can create a dictionary like that. And then you can do that for both rows. You can do that for the first row, and you can do that for the second row, getting your two separate dictionaries, and then you can add the two dictionaries together. Yep, no problem. Okay, Jesse, do you want to go to the solution now?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna stop presenting then, and then yeah.
All right. So while we were waiting, I already wrote out my solution here. This almost certainly isn't optimal, so take it with a grain of salt. First thing is I created a dictionary for the first input and one for the second. Then I create a dictionary that I'll use to contain all of them. After that, it's just a bunch of like lengthy processing and looping to turn the inputs into actual dictionaries themselves. And in order to concatenate them, it's pretty easy. You can just use .update, and because if you remember when you're doing .update, right, you'd .update, and you'd have it update using a dictionary. For example, it's actually concatenating a new dictionary on top, which hence why you'd have like you'd input something like this. And knowing that, we can just directly put a dictionary in it, and it will add it to the dictionary. So we have an empty dictionary, dict_all. Then we add to it using dict1. Then we add dict2 on top of that. And as you can see here, if we run this using the sample input, it will convert into that. Now, these are strings because that's how it interprets it when it splits. You could probably int them if you want to, but that's the crux of how this works. Do we have any questions about that? Okay. I'll go over the project then for this week.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay.
I got it. All right. So for this week's project, if it'll... Okay. So this week's project, first off, we want you guys to make a database of people as sort of like using a bunch of nested dictionaries. So for your dictionary, the keys should be different people's names. Or you don't necessarily have to do that. You can give them like an ID if you want to be able to repeat names. Actually, that's probably a better idea. Yeah. Let me fix that really quickly. Use unique IDs as keys. And then the value should be including name. Okay, yeah, that works. Okay. Yeah, so make sure you have a dictionary with IDs as the keys for each of them. And then the value corresponding to the ID should be another dictionary, preferably. And that must include at least their age, their name, and their gender. And then afterwards, we want you to work with that and to create a program that can do two things. So the first thing it should do is it should be able to display all the information saved for any given user based on the ID. And then the other thing it should be able to display all users based on a given trait. For example, if you tell it that you want age 30, so 30 years old, it should return everyone who has that as true. Do we have any questions about this one? All right. That's all we really have today. You guys can probably go. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is going to be the last week of the lessons, basically. So, yeah. No problem.